10, and we're still learning. So.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
So don't feel bad. Yeah, so congrats on the new book.
Thank you.
This is we're pretty early. This is probably your first interview, right?
This is for Redemption, the new one
Yes.
in September. Yep. Yeah, you're the first interview for the second book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I used to do a thing where I worked for Sundance Film Festival, interviewing their filmmakers that they would have at the film festival, and so we were often the first to interview them before the publicist had told them their sound bites and what to say. So it's always nice because you get to, and it's nice for you too because you get to work out your, what you're really thinking about.
The answers, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll talk just about the new novel and about your career for about 20 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll edit it down to about 3 minutes.
Okay.
And then I think we're gonna air this the Monday, the day before the book is out. So.
Great.
And just one second, my producer is asking me a question.
Sure.
Oh, she wants to see if you can move. Is it possible to remove your headphones and move back from the camera a little bit?
Remove them completely? Yeah.
Can you still hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'm trying to hide a bunch of junk in my office behind this chair. So.
Don't worry. And so the only other thing is we just want you to, it's just like radio or TV, we just want you to finish your sentences.
Sure.
And the final video will really just be on you. It won't be, I will not appear.
Sure.
As badly as I want to appear on camera. I'm not going to. So just don't move your computer and just look straight at me, and we'll be all good. So in this itself, when talking today, is not going to be live.
Okay.
So as I said, we'll edit it down to the best parts. So I guess the first thing that I was curious about it is, what was it like for you returning to these characters? Because I love how, like, in the beginning of the novel you get right into it and you just seem to relish being with them so much, and that's, an admirable thing, I think, and it felt to me like you were kind of itching to get back to spending time with them.
I was. I think that going back to the same set of characters, or at least many of the same characters that I had in the first book with the second book, was sort of a comfort thing for me, because you hear about all these authors who write a first novel, and maybe you get lucky and it resonates and it does pretty well, and then they have to move on to the second book, and suddenly you're sitting there with an empty piece of paper or an empty screen in front of you, and it's daunting to try to think about creating something from the very beginning again, and you're worried that it's going to be inferior to your first book, or that people won't like it as much, or that something will go wrong, or that, God forbid, you are going to get a block and you won't be able to come up with a complete manuscript. I mean, there's 100 different scenarios that run through your mind about things that could go wrong with the second novel. So one of the things that I really enjoyed was the fact that I did have this set of characters that I felt I knew very well, I was very comfortable with, and it was it eased the transition into the book for me. I introduced the new characters quite soon in the new book, but very shortly you see a bunch of the old familiar faces coming too, and so I did that on purpose, not only to provide some continuity with the first novel for my readers, but also some continuity for myself. So.
Yeah, well, it's nice. So, do you remember how you got the idea for a mother essentially kind of speaking to her daughters from beyond the grave?
Well, I was trying to figure out ways that I could bring in what Mary McAllister did in the first novel and have it be somewhat relevant to the story in the second novel.
Mhm.
And that's, in fact, kind of what she did. She managed to find a way to speak to the people in the town from beyond the grave after she had passed away. And I thought, well, what if a character takes inspiration from that? And that was sort of the final piece of the plot puzzle that I needed to sort of work out a central idea for the second book, to have the mother take inspiration from what Mary McAllister did.
Yeah. Um, so, are is it, are there autobiographical elements to the story? I mean, if it's not so much the plot, then maybe like the setting, or I mean, do you live in New England yourself?
I don't live in New England, but I have lived in small towns almost my entire life. And
Mhm.
I think that's why I decided on a small town setting for my books. It's just what I feel comfortable with and what I know. And I also think that today, because people are constantly staring at their phones, at their mobile devices, tablets, computers, whatever, and I really think that there's a disconnect developing in society. I mean, people rarely, compared to what they used to, they rarely sit down and speak face to face because they don't have to. They can text somebody, or they can call on the phone, or Skype online, or whatever it may be. And I think that in a lot of situations, face-to-face conversations are decreasing. And in a small town, that's what you often have, because wherever you go in a small town, you run into somebody that you know. And it's that element of community and sort of a connection that I really wanted to keep in my books, because I enjoy that, and I think that a lot of people would enjoy it as well, or maybe feel that it's somewhat missing in their lives as opposed to where it used to be.
Yeah. And so, do you write full time, or what's your writing process like?
I do now. Ever since, let's see, I left my attorney position in March 2012, and so I started writing full time pretty much in April. On April Fool's Day was the beginning of my full-time writing career, and wrote the second book, and I'm finishing up the third one now. I'm about 10%. Well, I'm about 90% done, 10% from the end. So I have been writing full time, but I'm also a mom, and I also have to juggle, sort of running to and from preschool and house things and child things in that whole schedule as well. So I'm actually finding that in a lot of days I'm busier now than I was when I was working as an attorney, which surprises me. So.
Yeah. So we're gonna hear from these characters again in a third book. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I can't. The town of Mill River it's small, but I'm introducing some new characters with each story, and I also want to bring in the existing characters. If they're not really involved in the plot, I'd like to give them cameos at least, so people know what's going on with them. But there's going to come a point where I cannot bring in the entire town very easily. So I'm not sure exactly who is going to be continuing on in any future stories that I may write, but in book 3, you certainly will see a lot of the familiar faces again. And again, there are a couple new people that you meet along the way.
Yeah. Well, you may not want to fess up, but is there, do you have like a favorite character?
Oh. I really like the character of Emily, because I sort of, not in every way, but I kind of patterned some of her characteristics after one of my own sisters, my youngest sister Molly, and the characteristics that she shared with my sister. She's very sort of self-sufficient. She's very much a go-getter, and my youngest sister's a landscape architect, and she's done internships where she's been driving dump trucks and, supervising crews of men, putting in landscaping. And I thought, wow, that's not something you see every day. I thought it was really great that she was, kind of exposed to those kind of things. And I could just see Emily being very comfortable doing something like that as well. So I kind of patterned Emily after my sister a little bit. So I do like her. I also like Father O'Brien, just because he's very much a grandfatherly or a fatherly type for so many people in the town, and I think that he's kind of the part of the glue that holds the town together. And he's always very fun to write, particularly with the spoon issue that he has.
So has your sister read the new one? Like, what does she think?
I don't know. I sent her a galley. But I don't know if she's had time. So I think that she will at some point. She might wait for the finished version. But I'm curious to see what she thinks.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there's been some nice, I guess you would say, sociological research that's come out lately that everyone tends to think that the important relationship in a family is between the parents and the child. Right. But there's some interesting research that it's really the one between siblings that is the most crucial, throughout our lives.
Right.
And I wondered what interested you in Redemption about writing about sisters who don't get along so well.
Well, I wanted to create sort of a situation that's the opposite of what I've known in my own life. I have two younger sisters. All three of us are very close. We have always been very close, and now each of us lives in a different state, and we don't get to see each other nearly as often as we would like. But every time we get together, it's just, it's kind of like we revert back to being kids again, and we're laughing, and it's something that never goes away if you have that kind of bond. And so I started thinking, when I was kind of noodling ideas for the second book, what would happen if you had two sisters who were that close at one point, but experienced something that really no one would ever want to experience, and something horrible. And I was interested in sort of investigating how far that bond could be stretched before it broke, if it did in fact break. And so that's sort of the basis for the idea, for the relationship between Emily and Rose in the book.
Yeah. So, writing, I want to ask you about writing, the process of writing Recluse as sort of an indie writer versus Redemption, where you had an editor looking over your shoulder. I don't know how closely she or he was looking over your shoulder, but talk a little bit about how that was different and sort of expectations, and did you feel more pressure with the second one?
I felt more pressure in the sense that I had a deadline, first of all, and which I didn't for the first one. I was just sort of, meandering through a novel on my own. I did feel pressure in that I wanted to write a better second book than my first book was. And I thought that I could do that, not only because I'd been through the process once on my own, and you learn an enormous amount after you write a first novel about character development and pacing and how you have to spread out the plot points and how it ties together in the end. And it's just very much a learning process, writing a first novel. So I thought, okay, I've done it once, so at least that aspect of it should be a little bit easier. My editor was wonderful. She was basically as hands-on as I wanted her to be, which was ideal for me. Which for me meant I basically finished a first draft and then gave it to her, and she gave me her suggestions, and then I reworked it based on the suggestions that she gave me. But at no time did she insist that I take any of her edits or execute any of the changes that she thought might make it a little stronger. It was solely up to me, and I really appreciated that. It was just a very respectful relationship both ways, I would say. And I do think that the book is much stronger because of it. I could see how, if I incorporated something that she suggested in the scene, I could see it grow and I could see it develop further. And that is something, quite frankly, that I always wanted with respect to writing a book. I wanted to have that feedback because I'm not an editor, and I fully realize the importance of having someone who is. So, with the first one, I was very much on my own, and this time it was just a relief to have not only my editor, but other people helping out with other aspects of the book, the cover and the formatting and the copy editing and the proofreading and everything that goes into creating a quality book, it was sort of taken off my shoulders, and I just loved that. I could focus mostly on the story. So.
Yeah. And so what, I mean, I understand that everyone's case is different, but what kind of advice do you give writers who are wondering, budding writers who are wondering whether to go indie or traditional?
Well, the publishing climate is still changing a lot. It's changed a lot from 3 years ago when I uploaded my first novel and had no idea what I was getting myself into. These days there are a lot more people self-publishing. There are a lot more people self-publishing who are getting into it with the full expectation that it will become their career. They're taking it very seriously. They're not just uploading a manuscript with a self-done cover, which is what I did, and which I wouldn't do again if I were to go that route again. I mean, they're having they're having their books professionally edited. They're having covers designed by graphic artists and professional artists. They're having professional formatters take care of the text so that readers don't email and say, "Gee, it's falling out of the margins. I can't read this story," which is another thing that happened to me. So. It's just a very different sort of environment than when I stepped into it. So I would say that if you're thinking about getting into self-publishing, you have to realize that the competition has gone up several levels since the time that I entered the marketplace, I guess. And if you want to be serious about it, you have to act serious about it. You have to create a professional product, as professional as you're capable of making it, and that means hiring outside professionals if you're not as skilled in these areas as a professional artist would be, or a formatter, or what have you. In terms of traditional publishing, I mean, it's difficult. It's always been difficult to break into it, and it still is difficult. And the two worlds, you hear stories about writers who self-publish a book that does well and they get picked up by a traditional house, and that happens, but it's, because the threshold for doing well in the self-published world has increased. I read something on Twitter from an agent the other day who got a query from a writer who had self-published a book, and the book had sold 15,000 copies. And the agent was like, "Nope, not enough. Not enough to get anyone's attention." And that's, a couple of years ago, 15,000 copies would have been a great achievement, to sell on your own. So, in terms of breaking in as a self-published writer to the traditional market, it's harder. And in terms of being a new writer, going the traditional route directly, of course you need an agent. You need to have that agent shop your book around. Getting an agent is difficult. Selling the book to a publishing house, especially if it's a first novel, has always been tough. I think you just have to have a thick skin, whichever way you decide to go. You have to be really determined, whichever way you go. There are advantages and disadvantages to each way, depending on what you as a writer prefer and what kind of book you've written, where it might fit in, what kind of audience it might have. But it is an arduous process, whichever way you go. So I would just say be determined, write from the heart, write the best book you can, and then make the decision based on what's best for you.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, that's really all I have, unless there's anything that you think is crucial that I did not ask you.
No, I think it's fine.
Great. So as I said, we'll get this ready and we'll run it the day before the book is out, and our marketing department might ask you to, or your publicist, to give us some signed copies. Sure. And to help promote it on Twitter, but we'll get to that in August. So anyway, congrats to you, and thanks for your time today, and we'll be talking to you in August.
Okay, I look forward to it. It's going to be a fun
Okay. Yeah, have a good day.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.